Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is my first time being called to the chief's office, so I felt like I might have been in trouble, but I'm delighted to be here. In all seriousness, thank you so much for taking the time today. We are excited today to announce a comprehensive strategy to fight auto theft across the city of Denver, and what we think will put us on path to be one of the most aggressive enforcement cities to make sure we can reduce auto theft across the city in a comprehensive way. I want to talk a little about the variables that led to us getting to this place and the strategy we are going to use to get out of this place, and the evidence we have that shows that these strategies will work. We know this was a function of a number of overlapping variables over the last several years that led to dramatic increases in auto theft. One was it became much easier to steal a whole brand of vehicles, particularly new vehicles that came out with defects that made it much easier for thieves to get in and to steal them and abscond with them. Second was obviously we saw a great increase in crime citywide, of which auto theft was often the leading indicator, but sometimes the least urgent when we had increase in violent crimes. And so this was able to expand significantly. And the third was it happened in conjunction with a dramatic drop in our patrol capacity. As people may know, from about 2020 to 2021, we lost about 13% of our patrol capacity, which is the equivalent of losing almost an entire patrol district of a police district. And so that lays out, we think, what the path is to how to solve the problem that we're facing. So I want to talk you through the overview of the 5 key steps of this coordinated plan we're announcing today. I'll give it over to the chief and his team to talk in greater detail. The first is, you may remember when I was campaigning for mayor, we publicly pushed for the idea that we needed to have a dedicated unit in the Denver Police Department focused on auto theft. Chief Thomas took it upon himself to get that started and launched successfully. We have now the Denver Auto Theft Team. That was launched as a pilot last year. It has been very successful. We're excited to commit to now making that pilot effort permanent so that the Auto Theft Team will be a permanent function of the police department going forward. The second one is we have also demonstrated the powerful success of the use of license plate readers. These are cameras that allow you to read the license plate of a vehicle when it is leaving a location. Once we have a car that's been reported as stolen, we know what that license plate is. We can then scan across those cameras for identifying those license plates. Under the chief's leadership, we deployed that strategy, as you know, at the Denver airport. Over the last 6 months, we put license plate readers at Den Airport. Over the last 6 months, we have dropped the auto theft rate at DIA by 90%. 90% decrease in auto theft at Den using these license plate readers. That is why our plan now is to expand that capacity across the city. We will take the city from 2 license plate readers currently in operation around the city and county of Denver to 111. We will put 111 license plate readers across the city at more than 70 intersections, which means if you steal a car anywhere in this city, we will have a chance to track you as soon as you have left that location, know the direction in which you fled, and be able to help inform police pursuit of those individuals at that time. The third is, as was mentioned, and our team can go in greater depth on this, there are certain vehicles and brands that are very, very susceptible to theft and make up the great majority of thefts happening in the city right now. Many of those right now are Kias and Hyundais, and those are because they have a function where you can break in. I'm not releasing any news to help thieves. This is all over YouTube at this moment. You can pop the cap off of the start button. You can use an iPhone charger or anything else to connect that electric circuit and start a vehicle with no key fob or anything else. So that is why we're working with Kia and Hyundai to host events this spring where we will invite all Denver residents who have these vehicles to bring them in for us to do a software update that will protect these vehicles from further theft. That's a huge change for folks that are at great risk with those vehicles right now. We are also, in the interim, Chief has led the capacity that if you currently have one of those vehicles and are worried about this, you can get a manual protection like a club or others from one of our local police districts to help keep you safe in the meantime. Number 4 is we are also expanding a program that the chief helped start called Denver Track, which is a program by which you can register your vehicle with the city so we can immediately locate if it has been stolen. Some of us, not naming any names, might happen to have some experience with this situation. But I will tell you what happened when I got my car stolen is I had not done this. We had not registered this with the Denver Track program. So what I have to do then on a Sunday afternoon is try and call your manufacturer, try and call the original place where you bought the vehicle, try to get a hold of someone who will transfer you. And it took hours before we could get that accomplished. If you pre-register your vehicle through the Denver Track program with the DPD, the minute your car is stolen, our police department and our auto theft team is pre-authorized to call the manufacturer on your behalf on a dedicated police line where they can immediately activate the tracking for that car and find it. And so this is a critically important need. We want everyone in the city who has a car made after 2014, you should do this, because it is the best way to make sure if your car is stolen, we get it recovered. Second thing is, if you're also someone like me who may happen to own a vehicle that is made before 2014 and does not have GPS tracking, we are also partnering with you to put in place a tile system that you can use, that you can store in your vehicle, that we can track. You can also register that with us, so in the event that your car gets stolen, we can also immediately activate the capacity to help you search for that vehicle. Quick recovery is the most important part of the strategy here. Finally, then I'll give it over to the chief. The fifth part of this strategy is, as I mentioned, a huge part of the difficulty here was lost patrol capacity. When we reduce our police force across the city, many things happen. One of them is our inability to respond quickly to auto theft. This is why we are so focused this year on restoring our police force to full authorized capacity. That's why the chief and I are working together to fill 3 cadet classes this year that would put 167 cadets and then officers back on the street. That would bring us back to greater patrol capacity than we had even in 2018, which would mean we have the people on the streets who have the capacity to respond. So we think together these 5 steps focus on keeping now a permanent Denver auto theft team, the focus on expanding 111 license plate readers across the city to help deter and chase vehicles that have been stolen. The ability to work with people that have high-risk vehicles that are being stolen to upgrade those with software improvements to make them more protected. The ability to expand our Denver Track program so you have your car registered with us, so the minute it's stolen, we can start chasing it. And the ability to restore our patrol to full force, we think helps put us on a path to make dramatic impact on this problem. So thank you all so much for being here. I will turn it over to the chief, and then we're both happy to take questions after the chief's done.
So thank you. So, as the mayor stated, we're building on our successes and lessons learned from our auto theft prevention and enforcement efforts, which saw, again, a 20% increase in 2023 and the decrease that we saw at DIA as well, which I think was also not just the license plate readers, but I think the fantastic work of the Metro Auto Theft team as well as the Denver Auto Theft team. Also using available tools and resources, we saw the nearly 2,200 auto theft suspects arrested. Also, 2,800 people signed their vehicle up for Denver Track. And none of those people have had their car stolen so far. So, thankfully, because they're registered, we will be able to recover that car quickly if it's stolen. But we're hopeful that the fact that we actually give everybody that registers a sticker to place in a very conspicuous location on their vehicle is actually a deterrent to it being stolen. So, again, as the mayor stated, our DAT team is moving from pilot to permanent. And so based upon the successes that you can see here, 200 auto theft arrests made specifically by this team. That's about 20% of all the auto theft arrests made by the city. An additional 45 arrests for other felony crimes, and then 30 illegal guns recovered by this team as well, which supports our theory that a lot of these cars that are stolen are actually stolen and then used in some other type of violent crime. The team is made up of 5 highly specialized investigators, as well as 2 uniformed patrol officers, and then supervised by a sergeant. So, I think one of the primary things that we're all here to talk about in today's conversation is we are preparing to install a network of license plate reader cameras throughout the city. As was mentioned, we're going to have 111 cameras installed throughout the city. It'll cover all 6 of our police districts. 93 of those cameras are actually going to be purchased through general fund, and we'll be adding that to 18 that were previously acquired by Councilman Cashman and Councilman Sawyer. These license plate readers will be helpful in helping us locate vehicles that have been reported stolen, as well as vehicles that have been reported as being involved in a violent crime, such as a homicide, as well as hit and runs. So certainly, we want to have some policy safeguards. So as you can see, the system will not collect personal identifiable information. The camera is vectored right at the back of your car, so all it's going to capture is that license plate. The data is only going to be stored for 30 days unless it is identified as evidence in a crime, and then it will be tagged, and that particular footage or image will be retained for beyond that period of time. But if it's not tagged, it will not be retained beyond 30 days. It will not be used for traffic enforcement or justifications for searching vehicles. All alerts will be verified with dispatch. So if an officer gets an alert on a specific license plate, they're going to check that information, cross-reference that information with the dispatcher before making any enforcement action. All searches of the database will be tracked, and then we'll be performing random audits or searches. I think it's also important to acknowledge that the footage is going to be owned by the Denver Police Department, the City and County of Denver, not going to be sold or shared by the vendor. It's also not connected to registration data or any third-party database such as Carfax or the DMV. And then, in the vein of transparency, we are going to be setting up a transparency portal where you can see information I think is going to be important to folks. This is going to be located in the same place where all of our other transparency data is located on our DPD website. You'll be able to see exactly where all of our cameras are located. You'll be able to see all of the license plates that were tracked, those that were identified as being wanted. Also, our policy will be available for review here. This is just an image of Castle Rock's policy that they have uploaded. And Castle Rock, by the way, has deployed license plate reader cameras and saw a 40% reduction in their auto theft since the deployment of their cameras. So before we get to questions, I just want to say that we're certainly encouraged by the decreases that we've seen so far, and encouraged by the promise of this new and enhanced strategy. And we're certainly thankful to the mayor for prioritizing this issue, which is certainly a concern for the entire community. So, questions? Yes.
So when this was, these first cameras were put out a couple years ago, there were some stories about people getting pinged for things like traffic violations. There were also concerns about, ICE accessing some of these cameras, and I know you said it's only gonna be used for this stuff, but, what would you have to say to the public, worried about, surveillance, or, how can we also be assured that, 3 years from now, DPD won't decide to start using these cameras for something else?
Certainly, fair question. So I think the cameras that you're talking about, I think one of them is at 6th and Federal, and those cameras were actually installed for different purposes. And so the tolerances, for lack of a better term, that were set on that were for various traffic violations and things like that. And so the tolerances on these cameras are not going to be set for that. It's only going to be set for auto theft and violent crimes and hit and runs. It's going to stay that way. Our policy is going to ensure that it stays that way. We're going to have insurance measures in place to make sure that no one is searching the database and using it for any other justification. And by city policy and mandate, we're not going to be sharing any information with ICE.
A lot of people are using AirPods,
Yes.
Apple's devices. What do you say to those folks? Do you want them to forget about them, keep using them? Do you guys have access to that?
We do, and I think, as the mayor alluded to, so obviously any vehicle that was manufactured after 2014 probably has some sort of manufactured tracking device, but those that were built before that date, I think those tiles are very effective. And so we certainly encourage people that have vehicles that were made before 2014 to get one of those devices, place it in an inconspicuous location within your car, and then give us that permission to track that vehicle. It's certainly very helpful. Yes, sir.
Do you have to establish probable cause, obtain a warrant, or what's the process look like for you guys actually accessing that data and using it in a case?
So the fact that the license plate is associated with an auto theft. So someone reports their car, they say this is my license plate, or witness to a homicide or a non-fatal shooting says this is the vehicle, this is the license plate of the vehicle. I mean that is reasonable suspicion, probable cause right there. And obviously, when that plate is alerted to an officer, they're going to contact the dispatcher to verify what they're in fact seeing. So, yes, sir.
I'm just curious, are these cameras in a vulnerable place? I mean, do you have problems with vandalism, or are you concerned about that? Does that cause?
Well, expensive technology, certainly, so I guess that is a concern. We're not going to be shy about where these are located. I know that the contract includes some maintenance, and so I think that other people's experience are that they aren't easily damaged. Yes, ma'am.
So with being transparent
Mhm.
about where they are, is the goal really to have just so many everywhere that you can catch people in the act?
Yes. Yes, I mean, we certainly don't want to have any disparate impact on any particular community. Certainly, these were the locations were identified through an overlay of violent crime, auto theft, as well as hit and runs. So that's how we identified the locations that they were best deployed at. And yeah, we want people to know that they exist. We want people to know that if you steal a car, you're going to be quickly tracked and identified and captured. And I think we want the public to have assurance that if your vehicle is stolen, that we have that opportunity to recover quickly.
So are they on traffic poles? Are they on lights? Where are they?
Yes, I mean they have to be kind of in a location where they can see down towards where that license plate is visible, and so I think any traffic poles and other utility poles and things like that are optimal locations. Yes, Jason.
Have you seen another major city use this type of technology, and why is this deemed to be the most effective in order to stop theft?
We have, we've done quite a bit of research, and so there are other cities that have used this. And again, even locally, Lone Tree has used it very effectively. Almost immediate success, I think, seen at DIA. So that I think is proof of concept for why this is an effective strategy. Yes, ma'am.
When was it implemented at DIA, and when are these going to be implemented in the city?
So a few months ago is when they were implemented at DIA. So obviously they had a pretty significant issue. There were a number of crews that were targeting DIA, and I think the installation of the cameras and then the focus of both our local team and the Metro-wide team was effective in addressing that issue. We are currently in the procurement stage, so I expect that we will get through that fairly quickly. And then installation is about 4 to 8 weeks. So I think in the very near future we will have these installed. Yes, ma'am.
I know you mentioned that there's a heat map that you use to determine where these cameras would be placed, or the license plate readers would be placed. Are there certain neighborhoods that people can expect to see kind of a lot of them, or what's that going to look like?
Well, as I said, they are deployed across all 6 police districts, and so certainly there are locations, maybe in central Denver or along East Colfax. Maybe parts of West Denver where there's been a higher concentration of both stolen cars and violent crime. And so again, those were the metrics that we used to identify where the best locations would be, yes.
And when you say central Denver, are you meaning downtown Denver?
Correct, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to put together a list of where these are going up? And then another question, when I think about tiles or increased car tracking, things like that, that also raises alarm bells for me for potential victims of domestic abuse. So is there concern about how increased car tracking could lead to more abuse that maybe isn't getting reported or things like that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. So 2 things. One, yes, we will be publishing the locations of these, and those can be available to you. And yes, I do understand the concern about the ability to track your own car. Certainly when someone calls to report their car stolen and even calls to report that they are able to track that, they are I think sternly advised by the dispatcher not to follow their car and not to track that car. I do know that there is thought of legislation, I think, banning that practice for someone to track the location of their car. I think that we've seen recently a pretty tragic incident where someone who tracked their own car and then was involved in a gun battle with the individual that stole their car, and that person lost their life.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Yes, sir.
Some folks in the community are actually worried that the penalties for those who actually are stealing the cars are not harsh enough. Was the conversation on making those harsher a part of this process of putting this plan together, or will it be in the future?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. So a couple of things. I think that one other thing that wasn't mentioned were some legislative concerns as it related to auto theft that I think led to an increase in auto theft. I think some of those things have been corrected through the legislature, and so. And I also understand that, in very close relationship with DA Beth McCann, she understands as well the urgency in addressing this issue and holding folks accountable. And so I think that she would stand here today and say that she is aggressively prosecuting folks that steal cars. Yes, ma'am.
I'll jump in after you, Chief, on this. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was going to say, at DIA or in other cities that have done this, is the effectiveness at prevention from deterrence, or is it from being able to track people down afterwards?
I would say both. I would say that it certainly has a deterrent effect, and I think the other thing is it makes it much easier for us to locate that car, get it back to the owner very quickly. And I think that the average impact to a victim of having their car stolen is about $10,000 per victim. An annual cost for investigating auto theft is nearly $600,000. And so I think that if we can reduce the numbers of cars that are stolen and increase the recovery rate of those vehicles, I think that we will have a significant cost impact. So.
Mayor, does your personal experience make this a higher priority?
It does not make it a higher priority. It just makes me more informed as to how the process works and how it should work. And I think this is why we wanted to focus both on prevention and on recovery. And so what you'll see here are a series of strategies around prevention. If we can help folks that have cars that are at risk update their vehicles to be less prone to theft, that helps prevent. If we can have you sign up for the Denver Track program and have that sticker on your window so every potential auto thief knows when they come up to your car that your car is already tracked and that's a bad idea. And if we can be aggressive about everyone in the city knowing there will be the capacity for us to identify auto thieves in every neighborhood of this city. When the team first came to me and said, we think this system really works, we could roll it out step by step, our response was to say, no, let's flood the whole city with these license plate readers because we want to make sure every neighborhood is secure. We want to make sure no neighborhood is exposed, and we want to make sure that there's not one sneaky route to get out of Denver that every thief knows they can use without being detected. We want to make sure we can find them wherever they go. And so our goal is this should be a clear message that if you steal a car in this city, you will be caught and you will be prosecuted. And that means you ought to decide to either not do it or to do it someplace else because we think there's way too many people being put at risk. And to just name what the chief said, for families that have one car and are trying to get to and from work and they're trying to be able to pay the rent, not being able to get into your car, not being able to get to and from work, that can have a massive impact on families' economic well-being. And we want to make sure that they are protected as they're doing everything they can to serve and support the city. So we think this puts us on track to be one of the most aggressive cities in the country on fighting this effort. And we think through the strategies this team have proven can work, we can roll out a system citywide that will be equitable, will be fair, and will be aggressive in making sure that no one has an easy task to try to steal a car in Denver.